practice when we are moved and inspired, and we can put it down for a sec if we're not feeling it. We can worship and feel devotional to mythical beings that resonate, or we can make an offering to our own highest self. Modern magic has no rules, is proudly magpie, while keeping an eye out for cultural appropriation, as we have learned the lessons of the New Age hodgepodge that came before us. We can do the work to learn if a spiritual practice is open, meaning the culture it belongs to has generously offered or made peace with sharing it with the larger world, versus closed practices, those rituals that are reserved for the folks who are truly a part of the originating culture. For the white people among us, unlearning racism and white supremacy must be part of our spiritual practice. Respecting that there are traditions that are not for us is an important aspect of that work. Approaching traditions outside your own with appreciation and respectful curiosity versus a white supremacist belief that everything is theirs for the taking makes a difference. Also, a stance of appreciation and respectful curiosity in general just might be a spiritual practice in its own right. Witchcraft has always been feminist. Witches, women, were the first doctors, the ones who knew herbs and plants could help and heal a body, the ones who understood the mysteries of birth, who helped demystify it for new mothers in their roles as midwives. Barbara Ehrenreich and Deirdre English spoke of these wise women in their seminal feminist pamphlet, Witches, Midwives, and Nurses, A History of Women Healers, saying, quote, "Her magic was the science of her time." The Royal College of Nursing in Scotland is currently funding a massive research project to find evidence of practicing midwives among the 4,000 individuals accused of witchcraft in Scotland between 1563 and 1736, over 80% female, of course. There is a movement to absolve these witches of antiquity of witchcraft and reclaim them as nurses or simply as independent women who went against the grain of their time. But there is also a movement among contemporary witches to recognize them as our foremothers, reclaiming the pejorative witch as not only the accurate term for a person whose spiritual practice deals with manipulation of energy, belief in the power of nature, and embrace of female deities, but also as a powerful cultural term for women through the ages who refuse to be controlled, to dim their personal power, or disavow their connection to the great unknown. As a young feminist, I was thrilled to see that the magical practice I'd begun dabbling in during high school actually supported my empowerment and independence as a woman. In the maiden, mother, crone triad of femme life stages that many pagan traditions honor, I saw for the first time the phases of a female's life from youth through old age held with respect and honor. Maidens weren't young and dumb, ditzy and foolish. They held the wisdom of wild mind, the innocence and insight of a beginner. Mothers weren't barefoot and pregnant, boring, or self-sacrificing. They didn't even have to be mothers, per se. They were simply women at a moment when their physical power and the power of their lived experience synced up, allowing their dynamic creative energy to be sunk into any sphere at all. Motherhood, sure, but also the pursuit of art or thought, sex, business, or relationships. But it was probably the revered archetype of the crone that most moved me at that moment in my youth. I'd seen the maiden and mother celebrated, if perversely, in the larger culture, but never had I seen a femme at the end of her life honored and revered for all that she'd survived, for the accumulation of her knowledge, for the way her body bowed to the forces of nature, having squeezed every drop of life from her precious muscle, bone, and flesh. Never had I seen an elderly woman's proximity to death approached with awe and curiosity. The crone in mass culture was a dithering fool, the other side of the ditzy girl coin, a little gross, a little scary, but mostly sad and powerless. With witchcraft, I caught a vision of the crone as uniquely powerful, still sexual even, still a cultural force in her community, still alive, a goddess, damn it. Within witchcraft, women and femmes got to take up unapologetic space during all phases of life, and this revelation was one of deep relief to me then, at the tender age of 20. While my own life was still largely unimaginable, witchcraft and feminism gave me a shadowy sense of how I might make the most of my time.